They told me to use the back door. Not with anger, not with cruelty, just with that smile people wear when they've already decided what you are. Ma'am, the guest entrance is on the other side, but if you're with catering, we have staff set up through the back. The girl was polite, fresh-faced, maybe 20. Her name tag said Emily, and she probably didn't know how those words landed. But I nodded like it didn't matter, like it didn't sting. Because you learn not to show bruises, even fresh ones. I stepped away from the double glass doors of the university banquet hall and walked slowly around the building, heels clicking against pavement. Spring air, gardenias blooming, the hum of graduation weekend. Every white linen table inside that room I'd paid for. Quietly through monthly withdrawals. I'd never told Morgan, never told her father either. They just knew the celebration was handled. Handled by who? It didn't matter. My name wasn't even on the guest list. The sun was still warm, though it had started to dip. It was the kind of evening made for laughter and clinking glasses. The kind where families come together to act prouder than they usually feel. But my family, we've always been more concerned with appearances than truth. At the side entrance, I paused. A delivery man wheeled trays of chafing dishes past me, nodding as if I belonged there. One of the student workers held the door. "Are you with catering too?" she asked. And I wanted to laugh. Not out loud, I haven't done that in years, but inside in that aching, tired part of me that always finds irony before joy. "No," I said softly. "I'm here for my niece, Morgan Turner." She tilted her head. "Let me check the list again. What was your name, Camille?" I said. "Camille Turner." She scanned her clipboard with the precision of someone who'd been told not to mess this up. Then she frowned. "Sorry, I don't see a Camille. Maybe they registered you under another name?" I shook my head. "Don't worry, I'll wait. It's not the first time I've been forgotten at an event I paid for." Inside the banquet hall, I could see them setting up all the volunteers in their neat white polos and khakis, folding napkins, adjusting name cards, dimming the chandeliers just enough to make everything glow. The centerpiece flowers were tulips and blue hydrangeas, Morgan's favorite. I'd made sure of it. The dessert table had the lemon cake from Charlotte's Bakery, the one Morgan always asked for on her birthdays growing up. I'd driven across town to place the order in person, but none of that showed up on a guest list. I moved to the far side of the building where a narrow stone bench sat between two boxwoods. I lowered myself carefully, smoothing my navy skirt, watching the families arrive. Moms in silk wraps, dads tugging at their collars, brothers taking selfies, grandparents beaming through reading glasses. They all had matching navy and gold invitations in hand, the university's official honors banquet stationery. I hadn't received one. I was told the family only got 5 seats. Morgan's mother, my sister Deirdre, had given those to herself, her husband, their 2 sons, and Morgan's godmother. "She doesn't need a godmother," I'd said when she named her. "She has me." Deirdre had laughed. "You're the kitchen aunt, Camille. You're already covered in blessings." I remember that moment not because of what she said, but how she said it. The way people dismiss you with love in their voice, as if kindness makes it better. My hands curled around my purse. The invitation might have been addressed to someone else, but the funding came from me, every piece of it. I'd watched Morgan struggle through her classes while holding 2 part-time jobs. I couldn't always help with tuition, but when I found out she was being honored as one of the top scholars in her graduating class, I called the university's advancement office and asked what it would cost to sponsor a full table. They said $1,250. I wired it that same day, quietly, without telling anyone. My supervisor at the dining hall once said I had a gift for logistical generosity. That meant I could move miracles without needing credit. He was half right. I never needed credit, but I did need dignity. And sitting on a bench in the shadows while the women in my family laughed inside, that stripped me of it. A deep bell rang from the chapel tower nearby. 6:30, the event would be starting soon. I could hear classical music floating from the balcony above. And then, applause. Morgan had just arrived. I saw her through the beveled glass, walking in beside her mother, laughing nervously, eyes darting. She looked beautiful. She always did. Hair curled honor cords draped over her shoulders. Her father nudged her forward, gesturing toward the center table. I saw Deirdre motion to the volunteers about drinks. She always did like taking charge at other people's events. But Morgan looked around, scanning the room, looking for me. And when she didn't see me, her smile faltered just a little. That flicker. It kept me from standing up and walking away. I pressed a hand to my chest, willing the breath back into my lungs. There it was, that small detail, that tiny unspoken thread between us. She hadn't forgotten me. Even if she didn't know what I'd done, she still expected me to be there. I stood slowly, smoothed my skirt again, lifted my chin, and walked toward the entrance, the main one this time, just as a tall man in a university blazer opened the door from the inside. "Miss Turner," he asked. I nodded. "I believe the president would like a word with you." He said it as if I were someone important. "Miss Turner, I believe the president would like a word with you." I stood there a moment too long, because part of me wondered if he had the wrong person. Another Camille, maybe, someone whose name actually showed up on the guest list. But then he smiled gently and stepped aside to let me in. The banquet hall was warm with candlelight and chatter. Crystal glasses chimed, silverware clinked, servers moved between tables with practiced grace. And there I was in my second-hand navy dress with worn heels and a purse that still smelled faintly of antiseptic from my shift in the campus kitchen that morning. But I walked in like I belonged, because I did, even if no one in my family believed it. "Right this way," the man said. He wore a navy blazer with the university crest embroidered on the chest. "Not a volunteer, someone from administration. President Langley would like to personally thank you for your support of this evening's event." I stopped walking. "I'm sorry, me?" He turned puzzled. "Yes, the donor who sponsored the Turner family table. Turner family, that's how I had filled out the sponsorship form. Not Camille, not Aunt. Just Turner. I thought it might make it easier. I thought they might see me as part of them." He led me toward the front where a wide stage had been set with a university banner gold drapery and a podium trimmed in polished wood. A small group stood nearby, deep in conversation. I recognized one of them, President Langley. He'd been at the university since before Morgan was born. He turned when he saw us. "Ah, Miss Turner, I'm so glad you could join us." He held out his hand, warm, steady, the kind of handshake that says "I see you." "Thank you," I said quietly. "It's an honor to be here." He smiled. "No, the honor is ours. Your contribution made this evening possible for nearly a dozen scholars and their families." "That includes Morgan Turner." "Yes," I nodded. My voice caught, so I just smiled back. And then he said something I didn't expect. "We don't always get the chance to thank people who work behind the scenes. But those are often the people who shape a student's journey most. Behind the scenes. That was me." He didn't mean it as an insult. It wasn't. It was the first time that night anyone had acknowledged that I had been part of Morgan's story at all. "Would you like a seat up front?" he asked. I almost said no. I almost went back to the shadows to the bench between the boxwoods. But then I saw Morgan. She was seated near the center, surrounded by Deirdre and her brothers and the godmother I was supposed to be grateful for. She looked beautiful, but her smile was thin. Then she spotted me. Her face changed instantly. She half stood in her chair, eyes wide, joy spilling across her face like sunlight. Aunt Camille's heads turned. Her father looked confused. Her mother's eyes narrowed. The godmother, well, she just kept sipping her wine. But Morgan? She looked like a little girl again. The same child who used to run down the hall into my arms after school, still wearing her backpack. The one who used to sit at the kitchen table watching me bake biscuits, saying, "One day I'll cook like you." President Langley looked at me surprised but pleased. "Well, that settles it then." He escorted me to the Turner family table, the one I had quietly paid for. As we approached, Deirdre stood slowly, as if unsure whether she should pretend she'd known I was coming all along. "Camille," she said flatly, "what a surprise." "Nice to see you too, Dee." Morgan rushed to me, hugging me tight, tears already in her eyes. "You came," she whispered. "I wouldn't have missed it," I whispered back. I took the open seat next to her, the one Deirdre had probably left for the godmother or some cousin who canceled. No one said much after that. Deirdre kept stealing glances at me like I was a ghost she thought she'd buried. Her husband looked like he wanted to ask a question, but didn't know where to start. The godmother excused herself for air, and Morgan just kept holding my hand under the table. Dinner was served, wine was poured, names were read. The celebration carried on. But I wasn't invisible anymore. I was there. I was seated. I was seen. At one point during dessert, President Langley returned to the podium. Before we close, he said, "I want to recognize a quiet gift, the kind we don't always notice until we look closely." He gestured to me. I felt my heart pause. This evening's banquet was made possible by a generous anonymous donor who requested only that her family be seated together. That family, he said, scanning the room, includes one of tonight's top graduates. Please join me in thanking Miss Camille Turner. There was polite applause. Not wild, not dramatic, just enough. I nodded once. I didn't stand, I didn't wave, but Morgan squeezed my hand again, harder this time, and whispered, "I knew it was you." After the applause faded and dessert plates were cleared, the real tension began, not in words, but in glances. I felt them before I saw them, the sidelong looks, the slight shifts in posture, the way Deirdre reached for her water glass twice but didn't take a sip. Morgan was still holding my hand. Her thumb traced soft circles on the side of mine, like she used to do as a little girl when she was tired or nervous. She looked calm on the outside, but I knew that touch. She was bracing for something, and sure enough, it came. Deirdre leaned slightly across the table, smile fixed, voice low. "We weren't expecting you tonight," she said. That word. We, not I. Not Morgan. Just a vague collective that always seemed to include everyone but me. I know, I said, matching her tone. I got the impression. Her husband cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Morgan looked down at her lap. The godmother was still conveniently missing. And Deirdre, she kept going. "It's just, we thought you were working tonight. In the kitchen." There it was. The knife slid in with such casual grace it almost didn't hurt. Almost. I gave her a long, quiet look. "I do work in the kitchen, Monday through Friday. Breakfasts and lunches, banquet services are subcontracted." Deirdre blinked. She hadn't expected a response, not like that. And certainly not in front of her friends, some of whom were watching now with vague curiosity. "I see," she said, trying to recover. "Well, we just didn't know." "You didn't ask," I said softly. That ended the conversation, but something had shifted, not just at the table, but inside me. For years, I'd told myself it didn't matter how Deirdre treated me, how she downplayed my role in Morgan's life, how she never invited me to holidays, how she once mailed me a birthday card with Morgan's signature but didn't bother to sign it herself. I told myself she was busy, or proud, or maybe she was still bitter that her little sister, me, had been the one Morgan turned to after she left. But it did matter. It mattered because I had shown up, not just tonight but for 18 years. First when Morgan's father didn't, then when Deirdre needed space, then again when Morgan wanted to go to college and no one could quite figure out how to make it work. I took on a second job that year. I gave up my car. I moved into campus housing meant for junior staff because the rent was lower. Every month, I made a quiet wire transfer into the education fund Deirdre had started, and then conveniently stopped contributing to. I never asked for credit. I didn't need a parade. But I thought maybe foolishly that when the moment came, I'd be seen. And instead they thought I was in the kitchen. Morgan leaned close, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry, not your fault," I whispered back. But part of me wondered if she ever asked the hard questions, like who paid for her books when her mother said the budget was tight, or why the catering invoice had been sent to a campus mailbox and not a home address. I didn't blame her. She was a child when it started. And children grow where they're watered. I had simply become the invisible gardener. After the program ended, guests stood and mingled. Hugs, photos, plans for after parties. The noise swelled with laughter and congratulations. I stood to leave. Morgan turned to me, panic flickering behind her smile. "You're not going, are you?" I said. "It's been a long day. But there's a dinner after this, just for family." I smiled. "I think you already had that." She gripped my hand again. "Please come, with me, not them." And that was the moment I saw it, the line being drawn, the quiet act of choosing. "Where is it?" I asked. She smiled through watery eyes. "My apartment." I told my friends I'd host, just something small. "You'll come?" I nodded. "Of course I will." I walked out alone, back through the same double doors I hadn't been allowed to enter earlier. The evening air had cooled. Stars flickered faintly through the spring haze. I exhaled, not defeated, just clearing space for what came next. As I reached the sidewalk, I heard footsteps behind me. Camille. It was Deirdre. She was holding her clutch awkwardly, like it didn't belong in her hand. Her posture was stiff, her voice carefully neutral. "I didn't know you were still in touch with the president," she said. "I'm not," I said. "I just donated." She gave a tight smile. "Right." A long silence followed. Then she said something she hadn't said in years. Thank you for coming. For everything you've done for Morgan. I looked at her, then really looked. She wasn't cruel, just small, wound tight in a world of appearances and roles. She didn't know how to step outside of them. You're welcome, I said. And I meant it. Not for her, for Morgan. I turned and walked away. That night in Morgan's small apartment lit by fairy lights and joy, she stood up in front of her friends with a sparkling cider glass in hand. I want to make a toast, she said, voice clear, to the one person who never gave up on me, who showed up every time without being asked, who saw something in me even when I couldn't. She turned to me, to my Aunt Camille. This celebration is because of you. That was the moment, not the banquet, not the applause, not even President Langley's speech. This was the part I would remember. It was 2 days after the banquet when Deirdre called, not texted, called. That alone told me something was wrong. Camille, she said, voice tight, no greeting. Have you spoken to Morgan? No. Why? I asked. She isn't answering me. I think she's upset about something. I didn't say anything. I just listened. Deirdre filled the silence. She left the family dinner early, didn't say goodbye. You wouldn't happen to know what's going on. I could have told her the truth. That Morgan had invited me to her real celebration, that she toasted me in front of her friends and called me the one who never gave up on her. But I didn't. I wasn't here to hurt Deirdre. I'd finally learned I didn't need to explain myself to people who never asked. She's probably just tired, I said. Deirdre exhaled, unconvinced. I just hope you're not encouraging anything. It's important Morgan remembers who raised her. And there it was. Deirdre wasn't confused. She was protecting a version of the story she'd built for herself. One where I had simply existed in the background. I'll let you know if I hear from her, I said. Then I hung up, not angrily, just done. Later that day I opened my email and saw a message from the university. Subject line, private recognition opportunity, Camille Turner. I clicked. It was from someone named Allison in University Advancement. She thanked me for my quiet contribution to the Humanities and Literacy Endowment, the very one that funded Morgan's scholarship. She asked if I'd attend a private donor luncheon the following month. Nothing formal, just an intimate thank you with a few key alumni and friends of the university. I read it twice. The name of the event made me smile, the room where it happened, probably a Hamilton reference. But to me it meant something else. For once I'd be in the room, not behind it, not serving, not watching others be honored with my support. I replied yes. The day of the luncheon came quietly. I didn't tell anyone, not because I was hiding, because it was mine. I wore a navy blouse, black slacks, and sensible flats. I arrived 5 minutes early, habit, but this time I wasn't there to clock in. The room was elegant, floor-to-ceiling windows, linen tablecloths, navy cushions on gold chairs. A student checked me in. Camille Turner, he asked, scanning the list. When he found my name, he looked up with a smile, the real kind. Oh, Miss Turner, thank you for coming. Right this way. I followed him to a round table near the center. My name card was waiting in embossed gold, just like the commencement programs. I sat beside 6 others, a retired professor, a state senator, a widow who had endowed a scholarship, and 2 alumni from the 70s. When the senator asked why I was there, I simply said I believed in someone. That was all. Near the end, President Langley gave a short speech. He spoke of quiet generosity, of people who make institutions possible without needing credit. Some of you in this room made a difference this year in ways that may never be public, he said, but will never be forgotten. He didn't say my name, but for the first time in years, I felt seen anyway. Afterward, the woman next to me leaned over. I have a feeling you changed someone's life, she said. I smiled. She changed mine too. We exchanged numbers. She invited me to her book club. I said I'd think about it. As I walked out, I passed the dining hall. Through the open doors, I saw the kitchen just like always. White coats, hairnets, carts being wheeled, someone with a clipboard giving instructions. I paused for a moment. I wasn't one of them today, but I had been, and I would never forget what that meant. The official graduation ceremony was held the following Saturday at the university stadium. Morgan had 2 extra tickets. One went to Deirdre, the other after everything still came to me. I told her I didn't need to be there. But she looked me straight in the eye and said, "You showed up for everything else. Please, don't miss this." So I ironed my slacks, shined my shoes, and took the bus to campus. The crowd was thick, students' families folding chairs on the field, banners flapping in the breeze. I found the guest entrance, gave them my name, and was directed to section 117, family seating. When I got to the row, Deirdre was already there. She didn't stand, didn't smile, just looked at me, then at her program. I nodded politely and sat in the last open seat farthest from the aisle. Deirdre didn't say a word, didn't even glance at me when Morgan's name was called. But I stood, I clapped, I cheered. Morgan looked out over the crowd as she walked across the stage, golden sash shining in the sunlight. For a second, just a second, our eyes met. Her smile widened. And that was enough for me. After the ceremony, families spilled onto the lawn, balloons, camera flashes, laughing clusters. Deirdre walked straight toward Morgan and wrapped her in a dramatic hug. She was already crying. "My baby, you did it." Morgan hugged her back gently, then looked over her shoulder. When she spotted me, she pulled away and waved me over. Deirdre turned mid-sentence and blinked. "Oh, you came," she said, like I hadn't been 3 seats away the whole time. Morgan grabbed my hand. "Let's get a picture." She pulled me toward the campus fountain, the one tradition says you can't touch until you graduate. I stood beside her while a friend snapped the photo, just the two of us. No performance, no edits. "I need to go to the president's tent for a bit," Morgan said. "They're doing a special reception." "Wanna come?" I was about to say no, I'd had enough of receptions. But she added softly, "He asked if you'd be there." I blinked. "Who, the president?" she said. "Dr. Langley. He mentioned your name in the donor speech. Said he hoped to meet you in person." My breath caught. I followed her across the quad, past alumni tables and lemonade stands toward the white tent near the main stage. A staff member waved her in, then looked at me. I waited for the question, waited for the usual pause, the uncertainty. But instead she smiled. "Miss Turner, right this way." Inside, the atmosphere was quieter. Soft jazz, small bites on white plates, chairs in neat semicircles. The university's leadership was mingling, deans, trustees, department heads. Dr. Langley stood near a display of student projects. When he saw Morgan, he smiled. When he saw me behind her, he stepped forward. "You must be Camille Turner," he said, offering his hand. "It's an honor to finally meet you." I hesitated just half a second, then took his hand. "I'm sorry, but how did you?" Morgan told me everything he said. "And your contribution didn't go unnoticed." Behind us, Deirdre had arrived. I saw her through the tent opening, slowing down as she saw where we were. Her mouth opened just slightly, then closed. Morgan looped her arm through mine and smiled. "I told you, everyone was going to know who you are, eventually." Dr. Langley nodded toward a small platform being set up for brief remarks. "Would you be willing to stand beside Morgan when we thank the families of our top graduates?" My voice caught. I don't want to take attention from her. Morgan squeezed my hand. "You're not taking anything. You're getting what you already earned." I stood beside her as the president began speaking. I didn't cry. Not even when he said, "It's not always the loudest voices who do the most good." I just stood still, hands folded, wind in my hair, beside the girl I helped raise. In a crowd full of names, someone remembered mine. And this time, no one asked me to use the back door. The following Monday, I went back to work like nothing had changed. Same uniform, same hairnet, same slow elevator to the basement level of the dining hall. No one in that kitchen knew I'd stood on a stage beside the president of the university just 2 days before. And that was fine. I didn't need applause. I'd had something better, truth said aloud in front of people who used to overlook me. I clocked in, tied my apron, and started prepping the sandwich station. The line manager, Julio, asked how my weekend was. I just said nice. He nodded, moved on. That's how we talk in kitchens, short, efficient, no time for stories. I didn't mention the letter until I found it. Taped to the inside of my locker under a faded magnet that used to hold my grocery list was a plain white envelope, no name on the front, just my locker number 22. I opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note, 2 lines written in blue pen. "I heard what you did for Morgan. You're the kind of person I want to be. Thank you." No signature, just that. I stared at the note for a long time. At first I thought maybe Morgan left it. But she didn't know my locker number. Then I thought maybe someone from upstairs, an admin who had seen me at the ceremony. But no, this wasn't official. This was personal, Quiet, like me. I folded the note and tucked it behind the photo of my late mother I keep taped inside. She would have been proud. That afternoon, while mopping near the back freezer, I overheard two student workers talking. One of them, a girl named Tanisha, said, "Did you see the picture Morgan posted on Instagram? She's with her aunt and the university president." The other one, Caleb, replied, "Yeah, that lady works down here, right?" "The one who runs cold prep, Camille," Tanisha said. "She's so chill. I didn't know she was family." Then they went back to slicing tomatoes. They didn't know I heard. I didn't say anything, but I smiled. Not because they recognized me, but because the tone in their voice had shifted. From casual dismissal to something closer to respect. Later that week, Morgan came to visit me at work. She wore jeans and a graduation t-shirt, hair-up sunglasses on her head. She came in through the employee entrance, not the front. Like she always used to when she'd wait for me after school. She found me in the back near dry storage. "I told Mom I was coming to see you," she said, handing me a coffee. "She told me to say thank you for everything." I raised an eyebrow. "Just now she said she didn't realize what you'd done." I nodded. "She still doesn't." Morgan laughed softly. "Yeah, but she's trying." I took the coffee and leaned against the shelf. She asked if I'd come home for the summer, Morgan continued. "But I think I want to stay. Take a few early grad courses. Maybe get a campus job." I smiled. "I think that's a great idea." She hesitated. "Actually, I was wondering if you could use help here, just part-time." That caught me off guard. "You want to work in the kitchen? I want to understand where I come from," she said. "And who made all of this possible?" I didn't answer right away. I just reached out and hugged her. Not a long one, not dramatic, just enough. "You start Monday," I said. That night I walked home slower than usual. Sky was streaked with orange and rosé. The campus bell tower chimed the hour. Something about the way the air moved made me feel different. Like I wasn't walking behind anyone anymore. Like I wasn't invisible, just quiet and finally seen. 2 months passed. Morgan started her grad classes and kept her promised part-time shifts in the same kitchen where I'd worked for almost 20 years. She wore the same apron, used the same punch clock, burned her hands on the same steam table I warned her about. And I watched her grow into something more than proud. I watched her grow into aware. The other workers took to her quickly. She listened. She stayed late to mop when someone else had to leave early. She didn't carry herself like she was doing us a favor. She carried herself like she finally understood what it meant to show up even when no one sees you. One morning, as we loaded produce from a vendor truck, the driver pointed to Morgan and asked, "That your daughter?" I looked over at her in her hairnet, laughing with the dish crew sleeves rolled up. "No," I said, then paused. "She's my niece, but I raised her. She's mine." He nodded. "You did good." And for the first time, I believed it. That week I got a letter, this time from the university itself. Official seal, gold embossing. Inside was an invitation. "In recognition of your contributions to student life and quiet service to the university community, we would like to honor you at this year's employee recognition ceremony." I nearly dropped the envelope. I'd worked there since 2004. Never once had I been invited to a recognition ceremony. I showed the letter to Morgan. She lit up like Christmas. "You're going right. I don't even have anything to wear," I said, half laughing. "We'll fix that." She took me shopping the next day. It wasn't flashy, just a navy dress with short sleeves and a simple gold necklace to match. But when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who belonged at that ceremony. Someone who had always belonged, even when no one offered her a seat. The event was held in the same banquet hall as the graduation brunch, the same glass doors. But this time, no one stopped me. No one redirected me to the back. A young woman at the front table greeted me by name, handed me a program, and said, "We're so glad you're here, Miss Turner." I sat near the front. Morgan sat beside me, holding my hand under the table. When Dr. Langley took the stage and began listing honorees, my name came third. Camille Turner Dining Services for 20 years of service mentorship and quiet leadership that changed more than one life. I didn't cry, but Morgan did. They handed me a plaque with my name engraved on it. I held it in both hands and looked out over the room, faculty, staff, students, and no one looked away. Afterward, Deirdre found me near the punch table. She looked awkward, out of place in a space where I was finally centered. "I saw Morgan's post," she said, "about the scholarship, the dinners, the books. I didn't know." I nodded. "You didn't ask." She looked like she wanted to say more but didn't. And that was fine. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. Some people learn late, some don't learn at all. But I was no longer waiting for permission to be proud of myself. I walked home that evening, heels in hand, the plaque tucked under my arm. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the lawn. When I reached my apartment, I put the plaque on the wall next to the kitchen table. Below it, I pinned the handwritten note from my locker. 2 voices from 2 different days, both saying in their own way that I mattered. And I realized healing doesn't always come as an apology. Sometimes it comes as recognition. Sometimes it comes as peace. And sometimes, if you're patient, it comes as a simple sentence spoken into the world. We're glad you're here. I don't use the back door anymore. Sometimes the ones we overlook are the ones holding everything together. Camille never raised her voice. She just lived her truth quietly, consistently. And in the end, that was enough. If you've ever felt unseen, erased, or asked to use the back door, I hope this story reminded you you're not invisible. You're just walking a quieter path. If this spoke to you, please subscribe. We tell stories for those who carry dignity in silence and strength in every step. You belong here. And we see you.